Hello and welcome to part 6 of Duna thing. Sure. So, today is actually time to start heading out there. Now that we have our astronauts up into low Kerbal orbit, they are ready to transfer over. Just planning out the maneuver. I launched a bit before the window, so I gotta wait for that to go down. Just time warp more, because it's a lot faster to time warp if you're not in the craft that's really low, because it has the warp ceilings, and that gets annoying. So you can go to the tracking station to the whatever, like I just did, and do that. Yeah. Anyway, we still have some fuel left over from that top stage on the bottom there, from the initial launch, so definitely going to use that to help out. So you're just skipping ahead a couple orbits trying to figure this out. And yeah, so it's always best to try and get your maneuver node to actually intersect your target from Kerbal if you can. If you're going to somewhere a little more complicated, like, I don't know, one of Jewel's moons, you might not get it. You might have to wait, but that's fine. For Duna, you probably want to. It's more efficient that way, overth effect and whatnot. I just choked on my words there. So yeah, just orienting to the maneuver now, so I don't do it then and then miss the maneuver, because that happens a lot to me. Yeah, of course, there are those two crafts in orbit. One of them being the initial thing, the Kerbal ascent / Kerbal descent vehicle. Although, yeah, one thing does happen if you orient to a maneuver node vector and then you time warp a bit, it always gets really off, and that's just because it wasn't oriented perfectly to begin with, and then it just kind of builds up over time to being totally wrong. But eventually we get back there, and we're ready to begin the burn soon. It's a bit of a longer, well, actually this first stage, or the top stage from the initial rocket, won't have a problem, but the main engine on the craft is pretty low thrust. Which is because it's a really efficient engine, but yeah. And this thing is torquing off for some weird reason. I tried to use the RCS to push it back on course. I'm not sure why that happened. Yeah, go away maneuver. Yeah, so that guy's out. And then just jettison that. Slowly push ourselves away. Try not to blow anything up. Not that it really matters, but yeah. And there we go. You'll notice I did not have a shroud on the engine in the transfer vehicle, and that's just because it makes more sense to do that. I don't know if it actually saves weight, but if you have an engine encapsulated in a fairing, there's no point in having a shroud on it. So that's what I did. I can't see out of the windows there, which is upset, or it's nighttime. No, I don't think you could. It looked like it was blocked. But that's okay. So yeah, just gotta continue this long burn. This thing has quite a bit of delta V, because it's got to go to quite a bit of places, and it's quite big, so it needs a lot of fuel. That's how that works, as I'm sure you know. So anyway, enough of that boring stuff. I'll talk more about how I actually plan to do the landing. So on the front of the transfer vehicle, you see the capsule, and that is the descent vehicle. It has two of the, I think they're called Thunker. The landing engines, the radial mounted landing engines. They're not super efficient, but they have a pretty decent thrust, and they're meant for landers like this. I use them on the ascent vehicle, the Duna ascent vehicle, and I'll use them on this too. It's basically a capsule with a fuel tank underneath it and those engines. It kind of like the Dragon 2 that SpaceX uses, and I did that on purpose because they're kind of doing the same thing. If you know the Dragon 2, SpaceX plans to land one on Mars, soft landed with engines in 2018, unmanned of course, but that's the first step. And they are using soft landing engines as opposed to pretty much every other mission that's gone to Mars, which has used parachutes, except for Curiosity, which is kind of a hybrid of both. And that's because parachutes tend to be a lot less precise, and if you want to build a base on Mars, which is what you have to do to live there, you have to be able to land things very close to each other. and parachutes are not very precise. Engines are a lot more precise. You can land pretty much exactly where you want to. If you've, I mean, you know, the SpaceX first stage landings, it's a bit different, but they've landed them like, basically, like the most recent one landed, looked like feet with it from the middle on the drone ship, so it was pretty good, and you don't even need that level of precision, so yeah, that's why you use engines to soft land things when you want to land them close to each other. And in fact, what they do with what they used to do and still do for parachute landing things is they don't actually pick out a single point for it to land at. I mean, they do, but they pick up, they set like a landing ellipse. It's an elliptical shape with the major axis of the ellipse, the long side of the ellipse, along the path of the orbit above the planet. And then that's because it's, when you have a parachute, it's a lot harder to gauge where you'll land sort of forward and back. Left to right, you have a lot better of an idea, though, because you're not going to drift off to the left or the right, really. The question is how much and how fast the parachute will slow you down, which will affect if you land further back or further forward. Which actually you can see if you pay attention to the previous videos where I was landing the base parts especially. I landed them pretty much in the same line, but some of them in front of each other and behind each other. So it's for a similar reason. Even though I soft landed them, that's just because I'm not a space agency that is very careful about numbers. I just kind of do it because why would I take all that time? Not that I even know how to like do all that precise math, but that's not the point. Yeah, so like that's why the Curiosity rover lands with the sky crane. It was kind of a hybrid of the two. It had a parachute for most of the slowing down in the atmosphere, but you know, it had a heat shield and all that drogue chute, I'm pretty sure. But then it deployed the sky crane, and that was an engine descent. So that let it, after it got pretty close to where it wanted to be with the parachutes, they can get it pretty close with that. They use the engines to sort of guide it over, steer it exactly to where it wants to be. And that's always fun to do. It's a good way of landing rovers in this game, too. Because you let the atmosphere do a lot of the descent, and then you don't have to rely on having enough parachutes for the actual landings. Sometimes you don't, if you're careful, especially if you're landing on Duna. Anyway, here we are coming in. There's Ike eclipsing Duna, at least partially, as we come in for the insertion burn. And just got to get down to periaps, because that's, of course, the most efficient way to do it. And come on, any day now. Alarm's yelling at me, and yeah, this is how far up I have to start. But sometimes I still have the thrust limiter on, because it's always good to have the thrust limiter on when you do course corrections, because they usually have to be very precise. And sometimes I leave it on, and I come in, and it's like, your burn will take 38 minutes. And I'm like, what do you mean? That's way too long. And then I turn the thrust limiter up, and it's like 2 minutes. And I'm like, oh, okay. So that's pretty much what happens a lot of the time. I'm not sure if that happened here. I can't quite tell because the playback is so low quality. But that doesn't matter. Point is, we are about to enter Duna orbit. There we go. Now it's just a matter of slowing down enough and then getting into a nice tight orbit that we like. Those tanks are out of fuel, so we got to jettison the drop tanks with the unnecessary yet cool looking nose cones. Do a very slight burn forward just so they drift back and don't hit me, and do a really sort of unnecessarily long shot of them drifting away, because I like looking at it, even though I went a little nuts with this one. Not nuts, but you know. Yeah, just that sort of shot of them drifting off into space. The transfer vehicle still glinting there, sort of near the horizon. No. Yeah, it is. Never mind. It is near the horizon. Like I said, I can't see what I'm looking at just because it's so low quality. So I can save it really quickly, and then when I upload the nice one to YouTube, like that one that takes a little longer to save. Anyway. You saw there the base on the ground. You can see it from over it because it's pretty close. I'm just waiting for daytime because I do not want to land at night, especially the astronauts. They don't want to land at night. You know, you want to land in the morning when you have all the daylight you need to get everything set up on the base. So anyway, I am planning the maneuver here to go down to the surface. Slight inclination change because I didn't get the inclination perfect because Duna is slightly inclined relative to Kerbal, and yeah, that's the main reason. Transferring all the crew into the capsule, and then just got to decouple that. Just make sure it gets out of the way, and we're ready to head down. I'm not entirely sure what my thinking was with that thing on the bottom. I think it was meant to be sort of like a pseudo heat shield, without taking an actual heat shield. It's just on like a stack separator. I can't remember exactly what my thinking was. I don't even think I did what I meant to do with it. But it's alright. It never really ends up mattering. Because I'm on engines especially, and because of Duna's thin atmosphere, the heating never becomes a problem. So yeah, doing that slight inclination change and just sort of a standard landing that we had before. Like I said, this capsule really resembles like the Dragon V2 kind of. Like I kind of did that on purpose, but just because it's kind of fun and satisfying to land something. It is parachute assisted, just because it probably doesn't have to be, but I wanted to be safe Delta V wise. I wanted to have that backup, and also it helps with stability. It means I'll land straight and not all crooked and wibbly wobbly. So I'm just kind of doing a nice thing. What am I saying? Words. Yeah, and then I lose electric charge, and I can't control it. So I have to turn on SAS, and then use the engine gimbaling to hold steady, and then I have to keep the engines on just to not flip over again, because this thing doesn't like to be stable, because it has that extra stuff at the bottom, which throws off the aerodynamics and the weight. Popping the chute there just to keep stable. Relay can disengage SAS now, but I haven't. And come down pretty close to the base, off to the side a bit. Like I said, the landing ellipse is an ellipse, so there's a bit of give left and right, but forward and back is the biggest off. Although I got forward and back pretty solid, I just missed off to the right, to the south, because I was coming in from the west, so yeah. And then just coasting down to the surface. Yeah, so we have our 3 astronauts, Bill, Bob, and Val. And just using the engines to make a nice soft touchdown. Yeah, nice smoke circle, and there we are. We are on the surface. Here we go. Oh, big moment. I don't have any special words to say, but there we go. And then, because I'm stupid, I didn't plant a flag here, and I don't plant a flag for a long time. It's like the last thing I do, almost. I just totally forget about it. But it will be planted. Don't worry, it'll happen. Just, it hasn't happened yet. So we get all our guys out, stand up, and I thought about walking them over, and then I was like, nah, I'll just drive this guy over. So I just pull out the Rover, because that's what it's for. And just kind of get it all ready, and just drive her over there to pick everyone up. Driving back to the... I almost said driving back to the hotel. Driving back to the base. And get them all settled in. Messing with some of the settings there just to get this thing to drive nice and straight. It drives... The wheel handles weird. This is still version 1.0.5, so there's not the better wheel handling, and it's all strange still. It's like frictionless almost. It's really, especially in time warp, like you'll turn and then it will like skid. You can be like driving sideways almost in time warp and it's fine, and then you switch back to normal speed and you'll just flip over, and then I brake way too late and miss them by a reasonable distance, but it's alright. Just gotta kind of walk them over, run them on full time warp, and they do the nice little zigzag dance that they like to do. And then this thing has a weird way of getting into it. You have to like kind of grab the front and like hang upside down almost. It's strange. And yeah, you can't even reach it, so I have to lower it onto the legs just so they can reach it. But it's alright, as long as I never actually tested that before, and I would have been very upset if I found out just now that they can't even get into the Rover. But luckily that didn't become a problem. So now I just have to raise up the gear and then just drive them back over. That descent vehicle is pretty much done. There's no need for it anymore. It has a bit of fuel. I mean, I could go siphon it off for its hydrazine so I can make some more. No, we don't need to do that. We just need to cruise back to the base and brake in time so I don't smash into it, because that would be bad. Oh yeah, it has a little dice hanging in the middle there. It's kind of cool. They don't actually jiggle around, which is upsetting, but that would also destroy the physics engine. Well, it wouldn't destroy it, but it would take it out. It's just a picture, I know. Yeah, so skipping ahead of a lot of like zigzagging to dock this thing, raising landing gear, and just kind of getting this thing all put together. There we go. Lower the gear, and their Kerbals are in. They just got to be transferred over to the crew, and this is what it looks like on the inside. There's a little shot of someone standing on Eve, and yeah, that's just, they look really, the IVAs on this thing are really nice. This is the greenhouse, all the plants, the dirt, some note that says something I can't read, and there's also a science module that has a bunch of, here's a science module. It's got a telescope over there, it's got a microscope. You can see the rover out the window. I was like trying to look in the microscope, I don't know. Computer, all that fun stuff. And then that one in the front is the cupola surface thing. See, there's just nice views of the surface and map over there, some books. Yeah, really nice interiors on those things. Turn on all the lights because people are home, so I turn on the lights. It's kind of a universal sign for someone's home, even though you're on another planet. It's not like someone's going to come along trick-or-treating and think if they're home or not, but whatever. Anyway, as I start to wrap this up a little bit, it is their first, oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, it kind of flips out, but nothing actually breaks. So I just kind of tuck in the wheels and then just spin it over onto the right way around, and it ends up being fine. And then I don't know, like physics, what? But eventually it gets all righted. Nothing breaks, thankfully. And we just drive over because I want to do something a little nice for this time lapse. This is probably my favorite time lapse I've done that you'll about to see. So we just kind of coast over to this little kind of dip in the hill overlooking this big plain where the ascent vehicle is. You can't see the ascent vehicle from here because it's out of loading range. But you will, but it's just a nice view of the western sky. Because now you'll notice I do have scatter installed, and I almost said Mars, and on Duna it looks very nice, but what's extra special is the sunsets, and you'll see why in a minute. So we get all of the Kerbals out to take a look. They want to see with their own eyes. They want to see through their helmet glass, not the rover glass, because you're never going to be looking at Duna or Mars or whatever not through a pane of glass. That's just how it's going to be. Unless you're looking at it from Earth, you just see a little red dot. But yeah, anyway, here's the time lapse. That's all for today, actually, and have a fantastic day.